Welcome back. This is World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. Tensions between China and the United States are rising again. Lately, Washington said it would suspend all Chinese passenger airlines from flying into and out of the United States, with the U.S. politicizing the origin of the virus against China on top of serious trade disputes. Cooperation between the two countries is getting ever harder. And how will the upcoming U.S. election affect ties between the world's two largest economies? I sat down with Professor Graham Allison from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. He wrote a book unpacking whether China and the U.S. can avoid a direct confrontation against each other. Here comes his new observations. Professor, as we know, domestic politics these days, probably throughout history, has been closely related to the choices of international relations policy governments would choose. So, could you help us to understand, Professor, how are some of the things going on inside your country now, whether it is a racial issue or COVID-19 or the economic challenges and election season, how are they feeding into the policy choices today Washington take in the international policies?
During a political campaign, essentially everything goes. And I would say the most vicious war going on the globe today is the war between President Trump and Joe Biden. Between President Trump, who believes he's fighting for his own survival, and his vision of America that's greater again, against an opponent, Joe Biden and Democrats, who believe that Donald Trump is the biggest threat to American democracy. So this battle is going to get more and more vicious, and unfortunately, I mean, now that we're talking about this in the context of China, China, which normally wouldn't be a major factor, will be a major target in this campaign. It's already clear that the Trump administration has concluded that a good line for its campaign is to blame China for coronavirus and the failure to prevent the spread of coronavirus. And therefore, and I would call this demonize China. Now, I would say both of these narratives are very far from the facts or the analysis, but in political campaigns, facts and analysis are not the coin of the realm. The coin of the realm is claims that have a certain credibility with the core constituency that the candidate is going to appeal to. So it's a pretty ugly process, and it will be an ugly process, and it will get uglier as we go forward. And I think it'll do damage to the relationship between the U.S. and China, because Chinese looking at this think, well, wait a minute, that's not us, and those accusations are not correct, and these folks are exaggerating. And I would say that's sort of the language of politics, unfortunately. And this time, I think it's going to be more vicious than ever, because really what's at stake here for the Trump team and the Biden team is not about China, but it's about each other and about the competing views and visions of America.
Shall I say, dramatically fast going down of the relations between China and the United States just over the past few weeks. And we still have 5 months to go before the ballot box opens. So many wonder what worse to come.
I would say they're getting worse now faster and more furiously than I had anticipated. I think partly this is, in fact, I would say this is more about what's happening inside America and inside American politics than it is about China or whatever has happened in the relationship between the U.S. and China. So, and I know that for for people in the broader world looking at the U.S., they wonder what's going on. But I just repeat what I said before. This is a life and death struggle as Trump and his Republican supporters, and on the one hand, and Biden and his Democratic supporters see it. And it's a life and death struggle, not just for themselves, though it is for, in Trump's case, he worries if he were defeated, will he go to jail? What will happen to his family? Or what will happen to his network of people? But also, what will happen to his vision of America? And on the other hand, if you look at the people who've been rioting in the streets, or if you look at the campaign ads that are crafted by the Biden campaign, or if you look at the views of Vice President Biden, he sees Trump and Trumpism and the Trump agenda as a threat to America and American democracy. So this is a struggle, first of all, within the U.S., and China just happens to be a target in it. I think that therefore we'll expect that things will be, more and more nasty things will be said about China. I know other foreign leaders from time to time who watch this process have just said, well, I'll hold my breath and hold my nose until it's all over, because after that, they'll get back to business as usual. And most often we do. But I think this time it's going to be uglier than normal.
First round trade negotiation already have its achievements. That's after strenuous work from both sides, particularly for the negotiating teams. Now, are we going to see that first round achievement continue to be implemented? I've been talking to the Chinese side. It seems that there are very specific plans and barometers of implementation, and that has been reported periodically to the international community. But many also wonder whether there will be reciprocal, if we like that word, actions coming from the U.S. side. And as a result of that, creating a bridge between the two countries.
That agreement is now in jeopardy, I would say. Not yet collapsed, but under strain. It first came under strain because of the coronavirus crisis and the impact of that on the Chinese economy and now on the American economy. As the demonization of China in the American political campaign increases, Trump and his advisors are being torn between what, on the one hand, are economic advantages, both for the U.S. and China, from the agreement and from maintaining the agreement. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, well, this seems like we're being friendly with the Chinese, or this seems like we're being nice. So if we're being hostile, we should finally decide they failed to fulfill their agreement. And so I could see the agreement collapsing. At this stage, I don't know. I'm on the one hand, on the other. The tariff piece is only one of 20 pieces of the conflict that's going on. The tech piece is even, I think, more severe right now, as you watch the ban against export of semiconductors and the equipment and for producing semiconductors, which will have a big impact if it's implemented on Huawei and other Chinese advanced tech companies. So the tech piece of this has gotten tougher. And however bad relations are between the U.S. and China, nobody in the U.S. and nobody in China thinks war between the two countries is a solution. Thank goodness, because it would not be a solution.
Professor Graham Allison from Harvard University. The second part of the interview with him will be broadcast later next week.